Hello, everybody. This is Senator Jeff Merkley. Can you all hear me?
Yes, Senator.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, great. I thought I'd give a thank you for joining this press call, and I thought I'd give a few introductory comments and just open it up to your questions. I returned yesterday from a trip to Afghanistan and Pakistan. To give you a sense of how it proceeded, it was 2 days in Afghanistan, first in Kabul, and then the second day in Jalalabad and places close to that. We flew over the Torkham Gate border crossing, which has more than 20,000 people a day who cross through that, and then a ton of truck traffic going in both directions, so we could see the trucks backed up considerably going both ways. And that is the crossing that you may be more familiar to. That's the Khyber Pass entry into the country. We then went to a village near there, the village of Mangwell. This was a chance to see an example of the local police operation and to visit a village elder there and have a conversation. And then we went to the forward operating base, Joyce, and that too was in that same area. And then on the third day went to Islamabad, and then back again. So 3 days traveling and 3 days in theater. There were a number of things that struck me in terms of contrast with my trip 18 months ago to Pakistan and Afghanistan. On that trip, I also went through India, but we didn't go through India on this one. And this trip, by the way, was led by Carl Levin, chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and as the third member of the delegation was Senator Shaheen from New Hampshire. One thing that caught my attention is in the last trip, the discussions were all about the military adoption of the COIN strategy and the 4 phases of that, which were laid out as clear, hold, build, transition. And so I did not hear those 4 words at all on this trip. On this trip, the conversation was much more about transition in 2014 and how to best make the transition work effectively. A second major change in the conversation was that a year and a half ago there was a lot of discussion of the challenge of Taliban units operating in and around the southern part of Afghanistan near Kandahar. And on this trip, because of the surge presence in the Kandahar area, the conversation was much more about the sanctuaries in Pakistan and the threat that they represent to the strategy in the theater. Then there were several changes in efforts to make the institution building, nation building mission work better. That mission has concentrated on the national police, on the national military, and third on the government. And you may recall that I met with a group of 6 Pashtun village leaders who came in from various parts of the Pashtun world to share their thoughts last time, and it was a fascinating conversation. These changes, I'll mention one is that there's a big campaign to develop training in the form of literacy for the national police. The national police recruits are only about 16% literate, and there was a recognition that simply people have to be able to count and to read, and so there's been a massive literacy effort to get people up to the first grade level, and that was accentuated repeatedly. This is not about trying to get folks to where they can read, say, at a high school level. It was just to get general familiarity with numbers and letters. And the hope was that this will contribute to reduction in the attrition and just to a better functioning national police, because they have been extremely poorly functioning. Another relatively new initiative was the Afghan local police. And this is an effort to say the national police model has run into a number of barriers, one of which is that folks don't want to be part of the police force and then shipped halfway around the country. We should recruit locally and have a unit that is working to create stability for their particular village or their village area, if you will, and that might work a lot better. And that was the point of making this visit to the village of Mangwell, because there is a local police effort that's going there that is kind of the model of what they would like to see built across the country. So that's some of the contrasts from a year and a half ago. Another major topic was corruption. Everyone seems to acknowledge, and by that I mean in talking, whether it's in regard to building the police or the military or the government or the economy, that corruption is an absolutely huge problem. It's when I was on my way out of the country 18 months ago that there were all the stories about Karzai's family and friends building mansions in Dubai. And that is just kind of symbolic of the massive corruption. Since then, we've had this major scandal at the Afghanistan National Bank, and that scandal is about $1 billion in insider loans. Now, insider loans makes it sound more official, but it's essentially giveaways of $1 billion with no loan underwriting, no collateral, and wherever the money has gone, it's not completely known, and there's efforts to figure that out and to retrieve that money, but the prospects, I think, are universally viewed to be small. Well, so you can think of that as $1 billion bank heist. It's one of the it's devastating, and it shows how corruption is present in every sector and is hurting the ability of the nation to go forward. And certainly, having financial institutions that work is essential to the future economy of the country, and every one of those $1 billion that could have been invested in the infrastructure of the country, be it schools and education or community health clinics or so on and so forth, transportation system, it's all lost. So I think I'll just stop there and see if I can respond to any questions that are on your all's mind.
Senator Merkley, this is Peter Wong at the Statesman Journal.
Hey, Peter.
Hi. Do you meet primarily with officials and other Afghans, or did you meet with any soldiers or military units?
I met with soldiers both in the field and in both capitals, in Islamabad and in Kabul. I saw Oregon soldiers in 3 different locations.
Okay, and how would you describe their morale?
I thought their morale was fine. I don't think in a setting such as the setting in which I sat, I would necessarily get what is closest to their heart in terms of their evaluation of what's going right and what's going wrong. But I did ask questions related to any issues that they think I should draw to my attention. When I've asked those questions in the past, issues have come up in terms of armament or boots were the 2 most prominent.
Hello? Jeff Merkley thing.
You still hearing me okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. And there were no such concerns at this point that were raised by the soldiers.
Yeah, hi, Senator.
Yes.
Hey, it's Charlie Pope.
Hey, Charlie.
Welcome back. Back in June, you and Senator Levin and 25 other senators asked the president to accelerate his withdrawal. You essentially said you wanted to see about 15,000 troops come home by July and a more aggressive downdraw after that. After being in the country and seeing what you saw the last couple of days, do you still think that approach is workable, or have you changed at all about your thoughts about the pace of the withdrawal or the structure of the withdrawal or just the general contours of it?
No, I feel like that was the better approach, and it comes down to this: we went to Afghanistan with 3 missions. One was taking the Taliban out of power. The second was to shut down the Al-Qaeda training camps, and the third was to pursue those responsible for 9/11. And we accomplished those missions. Mm-hmm. Now we are on a vast nation-building mission, and every aspect of that nation-building mission is problematic. I tell you, I hadn't previously. I'd thought primarily about the national police, the national army, and the government. But what this trip really made me think about more was the financial institutions, because of the heist of $1 billion out of the Afghan National Bank, and thinking about the fact that functioning financial institutions are extremely important to the success of the economy in the future. Afghanistan is an extremely poor nation. We're spending $120 billion a year on the war in Afghanistan, but the GDP before we went there was roughly $8 to $10 billion, and so our presence hugely changes the economy of the country. And certainly, you would hope that out of all this effort, there would be some economic infrastructure that would help serve the country well into the future. But it, just like in the other 3 categories, is problematic. I was struck very much. I mentioned the meeting with the Pashtun leaders a year and a half ago. These village leaders, tribal leaders, all said to me some version of the government is an affliction to us. And so I said to them, our strategy is to help build a government that will provide better service in education, better service in healthcare, healthier institutions, judicial institutions, and so forth. And so could you please expand on why you consider the government to be an affliction? And what they said was that you have to understand, Senator, that we know in our area who the competent people are and the people of integrity. And those people are never chosen for the governmental positions. And that the reason that they're not chosen is that these positions are sold. And they are sold from the governorships on down. And when people buy a position, they buy it to exploit the powers of that position, not to provide service to the people. And this is why the government is an affliction to us, and why we do not want a strong central government, and why we have little hope that the government will ever be an assistance to our community. I asked It
sounds like you're a bit more pessimistic than when I talked to you after the last visit about the ability of the government to function. And I mean, are you making an argument for a faster withdrawal again, and the fact that what we're trying to do there is almost impossible to accomplish?
Well, I was extremely pessimistic after my first visit 18 months ago.
Right.
What I did relay is that there was a upbeat attitude in the country. That wasn't my attitude about the future, but an upbeat attitude because they'd finally reached a decision on a strategy that was being widely embraced. At least they had a sense of direction. That was the coin strategy. But these issues about corruption and about the impact, and I had a lot of stories about the problem with training the national police, which I could revisit if you want. But it was that last visit that convinced me that the nation-building mission was off the mark and facing incredible obstacles to be successful, and that as in terms of both the lives of our military and the value of our treasury, there were better strategies for national security than the one we're pursuing through this nation-building mission.
Just to be clear, so it sounds like you're no more optimistic after this visit than you were after your first visit.
I am not.
Okay.
And I should say that related to the issue of corruption, when the three of us met with Karzai, we raised this issue, and of course he hears about it a lot, and he's heard about it a lot for many years. It's no new issue for it to be raised.
Right.
But his response previously, I think it was different from his response now. That is, that I think he tended previously to argue that it wasn't the problem people were making it out to be. What he said to us is, this is a problem, and I am committing 100% to fighting corruption. And that was a change in terms of tone for the president to take that, to say that.
Senator, yeah. You also visited in Pakistan. Can you give us a sense of the relationship with that country?
The relationship, and I should have mentioned this as one of the core observations, because the relationship in terms of the kind of just the feeling between the two governments is that how to say this? The relationship has deteriorated substantially. One contributor to that was WikiLeaks, because WikiLeaks essentially made it clear that figures who were working with the U.S. on some of the key strategies, but were telling the public that they were not working with the U.S. on those strategies, it was revealed through those cables they were working with the U.S., and they were deeply embarrassed about that. Then the mission to take out Osama bin Laden was done without consultation, coordination with the Pakistani military, and they were deeply embarrassed by that. They have responded by limiting the operation of some of our key teams in Pakistan, and on harassment of staff who work for our government, and just including the sort of thing, we heard stories about staff members being stopped, held at gunpoint, and generally harassed, and for what seems to be a clearly coordinated strategy of targeting staff members of the U.S. Government. And so these are kind of examples of that deteriorated relationship. The U.S. and Pakistan have some fundamentally different views on how to go forward. The U.S. feels it's absolutely essential to take on the sanctuaries of the Taliban in Pakistan. And the Pakistan military and government aren't moving quickly to do that, and there are reasons they're not moving quickly to do that. Some would note, and I say some, I mean talking about various experts on our team, our government, our military, would note that they are operationally maxed out, that they have many, many issues that they are dealing with, including some fairly aggressive actions they've taken in Waziristan. And that those folks that they're having challenge with are, the analogy was made several times, of kind of a double-A ball team versus the major leagues. And so taking on a major league team in that context would be incredibly difficult for them. But that's, I'm pointing that out because the fundamental friction, a lot of it is over our desire that they take on these strongholds and Pakistani resistance to taking on those strongholds. But then those differences, which are the same differences that existed 18 months ago, there was have been the conversations about those issues have been deeply damaged by WikiLeaks and by the assassination of Osama bin Laden. Now,
Senator,
someone earlier asked me about visiting with the troops. And I'll tell you, the one thing I keep coming away with is just incredible dedication and commitment by those troops to carry out their mission as it's being assigned to them. It's just very, very impressive how hard they are working to seize this opportunity between now and the transition.
Senator, if we go back to Pakistan for a moment, this is David Saracen at the Oregonian. You know, if we depart from Afghanistan, that's a kind of finish for that. But where does the future direction go with Pakistan, which is a much larger and nuclear-armed country?
By the way, what I have called for is accelerated redeployment of regular troops. And I want to be clear that there's going, even under the scenario that I and others have advocated for, Senator Levin, when he called for this faster transition, there would clearly be a connection in terms of training logistics. It wouldn't be every person leaving precipitously, if you will. So I just wanted to make that clear. In terms of Pakistan, that is the relationship we have now in terms of having supporting economic development, certainly in terms of supporting training, and in partnering closely on specific operations to try to, and the term is often used in theater, was to degrade the capability of the Taliban in Pakistan. And I think it's important to note that those forces, some of them choose to utilize the sanctuary in Pakistan and use that to sustain their operations in Afghanistan. Others, who are very closely related and sometimes referred to as the Pakistan Taliban, are their target is the Pakistani government. So there is a recognition of the challenge that Pakistan faces. And there's certainly a desire, I think, by all of us who went on this trip to help Pakistan address those challenges.
Senator, this is Andrew Clevenger. And I was wondering if I could ask you, certainly the relationship with the ISI, the Pakistani intelligence service, which traditionally handled a lot of money that the U.S. was putting into the area, has come into question since the Osama bin Laden raid. And given the state of the Afghanistan government, how confident are you that the money that the U.S. is spending in the area is ending up in the right hands?
I'm not confident at all. And I certainly didn't get a sense of confidence from anyone we spoke to there. There is a strong sense that ISI is very closely working with or tied into the Haqqani network, which is one of the major sanctuaries, if you will, of folks who are providing lots of trouble across the border in Afghanistan. And it's ISI is quite secretive, and it's not always clear exactly what they're doing, where and how. But maybe that's about all I can say about it, is that there's a lot of concern that they're in some ways adding to the challenge. Now, the reasoning that they may be working closely with Haqqani is that some in Pakistan have advocated that maintaining close relationships with Haqqani and working with them will provide a buffer in a future Afghanistan against influence from India. And so there was this concern that, and one of the questions kept coming up was, does Pakistan want a stable Afghanistan, or do they want an unstable? And it's a complicated question, and it kind of depends in part on what the government in Afghanistan looks like. And a government that has heavy influence from India in a stable stable Afghanistan, some in Pakistan would see that as a threat and potentially a second front with India, which is their major national security concern. On the other hand, a stable Afghanistan in which the Pakistan Taliban doesn't have sanctuary in order to keep running operations that attack Pakistan would obviously be a positive. Maybe that starts to get at the complexity of the issue.
So, what should a long-range Pakistan policy look like?
Well, I'm not sure that's one I want to shoot from the hips on. I think that Pakistan is an important regional player that is a democracy that we have. So I'm only going to shoot from the hip a little bit, if you will. But give me some time to think about it. I might have more to say. But so it's an important nation that is also important to what happens in the nations in the region, and they border on Iran, and they border on Afghanistan, and they border on India, and there's a lot of things related to their success that we would like to be partnering with them in and coordinating our collective foreign policy objectives. So in terms of and by our, I mean the three of us, our major presentation to Karzai and to Wardock, the defense minister, and to the others we met with, was encouraging them to find a way to partner with the U.S. in degrading the Taliban that are in the sanctuaries in Pakistan. Their major push to us was the America should not be hot and cold. It's much perceived that we abandoned them after the Russians left Afghanistan, and that this needs to be an enduring relationship with a lot more trust and partnering than we have right now.
Senator Joe Ditzler from the East Oregonian in Pendleton. Can the U.S. maintain that relationship if it withdraws combat troops? And I'm thinking of, for example, civilian partners in things like PRTs, the Ag Department, State Department, et cetera. Can they operate effectively without the security that our combat forces provide there?
You're talking Pakistan or Afghanistan?
Afghanistan, sorry.
Their ability I think you were referring to the economic development operations.
Yes, sir.
And those efforts right now are earnest but difficult. And by difficult, I mean that the amount of security needed to undertake significant economic development projects is often so expensive as to make them extraordinarily expensive or delayed or sometimes dismantled after they're built. Such in terms of, for example, building a school and seeing it school shut down. In the short term, when we have a large number of troops in a particular area, the response of the Taliban is generally shift their operations elsewhere, or continue with a type of tactics that have been so effective, which are to slip in and bury improvised explosive devices, IEDs, which expose them very little to direct military confrontation, but have an enormous impact, both for soldiers who are patrolling or for cars and trucks that are transiting the transportation system. there is no way, if we're looking down the road, there is no way to have enough troop presence throughout the nation to simply sustain security in that fashion. So therefore, a major part of this conversation, and this goes to the transition in 2014, the President has clearly sent the message, and the military discussion, and by President, I mean our President, President Obama has clearly sent the message that he is aiming at this transition in 2014. There are some provinces that have already formally made the transition to Afghanistan-led leadership on the military side, and they have different. They refer to them as tranches, different tranches in which different provinces would make this transition. Now, it's not like a light switch night and day. It isn't that the American teams that continue to assist don't continue to assist, but the goal is to transfer kind of the planning and operational security to Afghanistan. One person noted on the trip, one of the folks in theater, that without such transition, you kind of have a codependent relationship where America has been happy to provide the leadership and the money and the military kind of the troops, if you will, being aided by Afghanistan, but largely the job being done. But for the future of Afghanistan, there has to be a moment at which you say we're going to end that codependent relationship. The planning has to transition. The leadership has to transition, and that's what 2014 is driving.
Senator, just a quick follow-up. Where in Afghanistan, where leadership has transitioned to the Afghans, has it proven successful? We keep hearing stories where the Taliban has crept back in, or there have been reports of corruption. But is this model taking effect?
And I'm sorry, this is going to have to be our last question.
So your question goes beyond the details that were presented to us in the theater. The U.S. military referred to the first tranche as having been largely successful and including a mix of provinces, but I did not specifically see that list or hear any details on the individual efforts and what sort of challenges that they had faced and overcome. So I'll just have to say I don't have enough detail to be able to answer that question. So I want to thank you all very much for getting on the call, and just close again with noting that our sons and daughters in the theater are working very hard to do the mission that they have now been assigned, this nation-building mission of training, supporting, creating the space for economic development, and so forth. It is an enormously difficult mission, but I think we can all applaud their dedication and their efforts in the field. Thank you all.